Welcome, everyone. Today, we are taking a closer look at something called the dismissive avoidant attachment style. We will be using information from Mindy Rivers' book, Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style, to help us break down some big ideas into simple, everyday terms. Walter, it's great to have you here to walk us through this. Let's start with a core idea from the book: independence as identity. What does that really mean for someone with this style?
So, it's good to be here, Julian. For many people, being independent is just a good quality, right? It means you can handle things, make your own choices. But for someone with a dismissive avoidant style, independence is much more than that. It's like their whole self. It's not just what they do, it's who they believe they are deep down.
So it's not just a skill, it's their very definition of self. That sounds really intense. What makes it so fundamental for them?
Exactly. The book explains that this happens when independence gets tied to feeling safe. Many people with this style learned early on that they couldn't really count on others for comfort. Maybe their feelings weren't listened to, or asking for help just led to disappointment or even shame. So they learned to rely only on themselves. It was a way to survive, a way to stay safe.
That makes sense. If you learn that leaning on others doesn't work, then being self-sufficient becomes your only option. And I can see how that would get reinforced over time. The book mentions that this identity can even be boosted by praise, correct?
Absolutely. Kids who are very independent are often called mature or responsible by adults. They get praised for being strong. This makes them feel proud, and that pride is real. The problem is when this praise goes too far, and they start to believe that showing any weakness or needing help is just not okay. They might grow up feeling uncomfortable if someone tries to care for them, because that care feels like it's threatening the strong, independent person they've always been.
So even a kind offer of help can feel like an attack on their identity. How does that typically play out in real life?
The book gives a great example. Imagine someone with this style is going through a tough time, and a friend offers to help. The person might quickly say no, or insist they have everything under control. They might even feel annoyed by the offer, almost as if the offer suggests they're not capable enough. They often don't realize this irritation is actually fear. The fear is accepting help means becoming dependent, and dependence is a threat to who they are.
That's a powerful insight. It's not about rejecting the person, but protecting their sense of self. How does this independence as identity idea affect their romantic relationships?
It changes a lot. They want love, but they don't want it to feel like they're losing themselves. They really value their privacy, their routines, and their freedom. Sometimes they're drawn to partners who also seem very independent. In the beginning, this can work well because new romance doesn't usually demand a lot of deep merging. But as the relationship gets serious and the partner needs more or expects more, it can feel like their identity is being pulled apart. They might start to feel trapped or crowded, even if their partner isn't trying to control them at all.
So deeper commitment can be a trigger. What are some specific examples of this happening in relationships?
When things get serious, like moving in together or talking about future plans or even discussing shared finances, these conversations can bring up a lot of discomfort. They might focus on what they'll lose, like their alone time or their habits. They see these changes as losing freedom because for them, their freedom is directly linked to feeling safe. The partner might just see these as normal steps towards being closer, but the avoidant person feels their whole sense of safety is being threatened.
It sounds like their internal alarm system goes off. And how does this affect how they deal with emotions?
They often feel that emotions are something you handle by yourself, privately. They might believe talking about feelings is just not needed, or that leaning on someone else emotionally is a burden. These beliefs actually protect their independent identity. If you never lean on someone, you never risk being disappointed. If you never ask, you never risk being judged. So they become really good at dealing with pain on their own. But this can make them feel very lonely.
That's such a tough spot. They're strong, but it comes with a quiet cost of loneliness. How does this play out when there's a disagreement or conflict in a relationship?
The book describes a common situation. If a partner needs reassurance during a fight, the dismissive avoidant person might feel a lot of pressure. They might think, why can't you handle your own feelings? Because their own life has been built around doing just that. They might even feel annoyed that their partner is asking for emotional support. The partner ends up feeling hurt, and the avoidant person feels misunderstood. What's really happening is the partner wants connection, and the avoidant person is just trying to protect their independence, which feels like their lifeline.
So it's not a lack of love, but a defense mechanism. What about when someone needs them? How does being needed feel to a dismissive avoidant person?
At first, it can feel really good, almost flattering, because it shows they're valued. But over time, being needed can start to feel overwhelming, even suffocating. They might feel responsible for their partner's emotional state. And even if the partner isn't asking for constant attention, the avoidant person might feel like any emotional expression is a huge demand. This can make them withdraw, because pulling away brings back that feeling of independence and safety.
It sounds like a tricky balance. And the book also talks about how this style can make them think about love itself in a specific way.
Yes, they often believe that love should be easy and effortless. If there's any needing, it means the relationship isn't right. This belief protects their identity. If needing shows weakness, then a relationship that asks for emotional involvement feels like a failure. They might then convince themselves they should leave, chasing a fantasy of a perfectly easy relationship. But the truth is, all close relationships involve needing and working through things. Avoidance makes these normal parts of love feel like big problems.
So they desire connection, but their fear of losing themselves drives them to keep a distance even when it hurts. How can someone heal from this or move forward?
The good news is that healing doesn't mean giving up independence. That can still be a strength. The goal is to separate independence from being a defense. You can be independent and still feel connected to others. You can rely on yourself, but also let others support you sometimes. Healthy relationships are not about one person needing nothing. They're about two people choosing each other and still respecting who they are as individuals. For dismissive avoidant people, this often means learning that interdependence is not the same as being trapped. Interdependence is the ability to give and receive support in a way that preserves dignity for both people.
That's a really important distinction. Connected versus trapped. How does this growth look in a practical sense?
The book offers an example. Someone with this style might say, "I need some time alone, and I also want to be close to you." This kind of statement honors both their need for space and their desire for intimacy. It shows that taking time alone isn't a rejection, but a form of self-care. It also shows that love is still there. When partners can understand and respect this, the relationship feels much safer for the avoidant person, and they feel less trapped, which actually makes closeness easier.
That's a great example of honoring both needs. It sounds like a path toward freedom where independence is a choice, not a shield. Now, moving on to another core concept, the discomfort with intimacy. Many people assume intimacy is always good in a loving relationship, but for dismissive avoidance, it can be quite unsettling. Why is that?
You're right, it can be confusing for others. For someone with this style, intimacy can feel both good and bad at the same time. They might enjoy closeness one moment and then suddenly feel the need to pull away. They might want connection deeply, but still feel tense when that connection gets very emotional. This isn't because they're cold or can't love. It's often because intimacy touches on old lessons they learned about safety, control, and needing others.
So it's not just about spending time together. The book defines intimacy as something deeper. Can you explain that?
Intimacy means letting someone truly know you emotionally and letting their feelings affect you. It's about letting someone see you when you're not at your best. It's admitting what you want, what you're scared of, what you regret. It's allowing someone else's opinion to really matter to you. That's why it feels risky. When someone truly matters, they have the power to hurt you. Not because they will, but because they could. For dismissive avoidance, that possibility feels too close and too real.
And this discomfort you're saying often starts very early in life?
Yes, typically in childhood. If emotions weren't welcomed in their home, being emotionally seen just didn't feel safe. They might have learned that showing feelings led to being ignored or criticized, or that needing someone led to disappointment. Sometimes closeness came with pressure. These early experiences teach them that intimacy equals danger. The danger could be shame, or feeling trapped, or losing control. So their body learns that the safest thing to do is keep some distance.
It's a survival mechanism from childhood. How does this play out as a relationship grows?
At the start, a relationship often feels exciting and easy. The avoidant person can be very attentive and present because the closeness is light and not too demanding. But as time goes on, the partner usually wants more emotional depth. They want to talk about the relationship, about feelings, about the future. That's when the avoidant person starts to feel uneasy. They might not even know why. The partner might think they're losing interest, but the avoidant person feels like the intimacy is moving into territory that brings up old fears.
So it's not a lack of interest, but an activation of old fears. And this also leads to a need to control the distance in the relationship.
Exactly. They often feel best when they get to choose when closeness happens. They might enjoy intimacy when they're the one who starts it, when it feels calm and when there's still a lot of personal space. But if the partner initiates intimacy, especially in a very emotional way, the avoidant person can feel pressured. Pressure makes intimacy feel like a chore instead of a gift. So they pull back to get that feeling of choice back. The partner feels rejected, but the avoidant person feels relief. The pattern is about safety, not about lack of love.
That's a painful cycle where both people misunderstand each other's actions. It's not about a lack of love, but a need for safety. Does the fear of being needed also play into this discomfort with intimacy?
Yes, very much so. Many dismissive avoidants connect needing with something heavy or burdensome. They might have learned that their emotional needs were too much for their parents, or that expressing needs was met with irritation. In adult relationships, a partner's needs can trigger the fear that they will become responsible for someone else's emotional well-being. Even if the partner isn't asking for that, the avoidant person feels it. Intimacy then feels like a doorway into responsibility, and responsibility feels like a trap. They withdraw to avoid feeling trapped.
So if a partner says something loving like, "I miss you," how might that be received?
Even those loving words can create tension. To the dismissive avoidant, "I miss you" can sound like a request for more contact, more reassurance, more closeness. They might reply with a short message, or take a long time to respond, or change the subject. The partner feels hurt, while the avoidant person feels calmer because they've created distance from what felt like an obligation. Intimacy was offered, and it activated a fear.
And the book also mentions a fear of being seen as not good enough, right?
That's a big one. If their identity is built around being capable and in control, intimacy can show the parts of them that feel messy, like insecurity or confusion. Many fear that if their partner truly sees them, they'll be judged or lose respect. They might feel safer being admired from a distance than being truly known up close. This can lead to relationships where they're pleasant and supportive, yet emotionally hard to reach, keeping their vulnerable parts behind a wall.
This leads us to how they handle emotional communication, or rather, don't handle it. What's the challenge there?
Many dismissive avoidants were simply not taught the language of emotions. If they grew up in a home where feelings weren't discussed, they don't have practice naming what they feel. When a partner asks them to share, they might feel blank or pressured or even irritated because the request feels impossible. The partner might see this blankness as a refusal, but the avoidant person is genuinely confused. It's not that they have no inner world, they just don't know how to put it into words.
So if a partner asks, "How did that make you feel?" how would they likely respond?
They would likely respond with facts, not feelings. They describe what happened, what they did, what their plan is. The partner wants emotional connection and feels disappointed. The avoidant person feels like they answered the question and gets frustrated. Facts feel safer than feelings because facts don't expose their heart. Intimacy asks for the heart, but their heart has been guarded for a very long time.
And this discomfort doesn't just happen during intimacy, but sometimes after as an emotional hangover?
Precisely. They might have a really tender conversation and feel close, but then later feel restless or irritable. They'll feel a strong urge to be alone, to get their independence back. This often confuses partners who think closeness should lead to more closeness. But for the avoidant person, that closeness might have activated a deep longing, and longing can feel dangerous. Distance then quiets that longing, but at the cost of the relationship.
So it's not that they don't want intimacy, it's that they want it in a way that feels safe for them. How can this be healed or improved?
Healing means building tolerance for intimacy step by step. They don't have to force themselves to share everything at once. They can practice sharing one small truth, staying present a few minutes longer, or receiving care without pushing it away. They can also practice saying they need space without just disappearing. These small steps create new experiences that teach them intimacy isn't always dangerous. Over time, it can start to feel less like a threat and more like comfort.
That sounds like a gentle, gradual approach. Can you give an example of what that growth might look like?
Instead of shutting down when their partner wants to talk, they might say, "I want to talk and I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed. Can we slow down?" This is intimacy. It's honest. It keeps them connected and it respects their limits. The partner feels less rejected and the avoidant person feels less trapped. It builds a bridge between needing independence and wanting closeness.
That's a very clear way to communicate needs. It really highlights that this discomfort isn't a sign of being cold or unloving, but a protective response. Let's move on to difficulty expressing feelings. You mentioned this earlier, but can you go deeper into why it's such a common challenge for dismissive avoidance?
Many people with this style aren't trying to be secretive or cold. They often care very deeply. The problem is that expressing feelings can feel really unsafe, confusing, or simply pointless to them. This comes from what they learned about emotions when they were young. If their relationship with feelings was shaped by criticism, being ignored, or just silence, then finding the right words for their feelings becomes incredibly difficult. They might feel like they don't have the language, or that if they speak, they'll be judged, or that talking will just make things worse.
So it's not a choice, but a learned pattern. How does this learning happen in childhood?
Children learn emotional language through experience. They learn what sadness is when someone names it and comforts them. They learn about fear when someone notices it and reassures them. If these interactions don't happen, feelings stay vague. They might just feel like tension or restlessness or general discomfort rather than clear emotions with names. The child learns to go through life without talking about their inner world because it was never a part of how their family connected.
So if feelings aren't named, children focus on actions instead of emotions?
Yes. When feelings aren't welcome, kids often focus on how to behave. They learn what actions are okay, not what feelings are okay. They learn how to manage how they appear, to be polite, to do well, and to avoid trouble. As adults, they're often excellent at describing events and decisions, but they struggle to say what's happening inside them. They might say they're tired or stressed because those words feel safer. Saying they're hurt, lonely, or afraid feels too exposing. It's not a lack of deep feelings, it's a lack of practice naming them.
And when a partner asks, "What are you feeling?" they just go blank?
That's very common. The partner might think they're refusing to share, but the avoidant person might truly not know what they feel. They also might feel a lot of pressure to quickly come up with an answer, and that pressure makes it even harder to access their feelings. So they might respond with facts or logic instead of emotions. The partner feels unheard, and the avoidant person feels frustrated because they're being asked to do something that feels impossible.
It sounds like shame also plays a big role in this difficulty.
Definitely. If they were ashamed for their emotions as a child, they often carry a belief that feelings are embarrassing. They might have learned that crying is weak, or fear is childish, or needing is a burden. As an adult, the moment they try to speak a feeling, shame can rise up and make it hard to talk. They feel exposed or awkward. It feels easier to just stop talking. Silence protects them from shame.
And this is especially difficult in romantic relationships where emotional sharing is expected.
Yes,
Friends and coworkers might not ask for deep vulnerability, but partners usually do. They want to know what you feel about the relationship, the future, or a conflict. The dismissive avoidant person can feel trapped. They worry that saying the wrong thing will cause a bigger problem or that sharing feelings will create expectations they can't meet. So they often choose silence because it feels safer than being vulnerable.
It seems like they also learn to disconnect from their feelings to function, which makes them even harder to access.
If they grew up without much comfort, they learn to push feelings down and just keep going. This skill can help them succeed in many areas, but it also makes their feelings less available to them. They might not know what they feel until the emotion becomes really strong and then it feels overwhelming. Overwhelm makes it even harder to find words, so they might shut down or withdraw, and their partner experiences them as emotionally absent. So they might seem fine for weeks, then suddenly become distant or irritable, and when asked what's wrong, they say nothing.
That's a classic sign. Underneath, there might be a buildup of hurt, stress, or resentment that was never expressed. Because it was never talked about, it never got processed. It just quietly builds up and then shows up as distance. This is how not expressing feelings can harm relationships. Not because the person doesn't care, but because unsaid feelings create invisible walls.
And this difficulty is also linked to a fear of conflict?
Many dismissive avoidants learn that emotional talks often led to criticism or big fights. If they learn that talking about feelings made things worse, they'll avoid it. They might believe it's better to keep things calm and just let things go. Sometimes letting go is healthy, but other times it means they're swallowing their hurt, which later makes them distant. The relationship might stay calm on the surface, but the emotional connection weakens.
It seems like they approach emotions as problems that need solutions, which can make them seem dismissive.
Exactly. When a partner shares a feeling, the avoidant person might immediately look for a fix. They might say, just do this, or it will be fine. But the partner often wants understanding and empathy, not just solutions. The avoidant person gets confused because offering solutions is how they show they care. Underneath, feelings without clear fixes can make them uncomfortable. If they can't solve a feeling, they might feel helpless, and helplessness can trigger shame. So it feels safer to stay silent than to sit with that helplessness.
So if a partner cries, they might freeze?
Yes, that's common. They might not know what to say. They feel pressured to say something comforting, but they fear saying the wrong thing. So they might become quiet or even leave the room. The partner feels abandoned, and the avoidant person feels overwhelmed. They care deeply, but they don't have a learned script for how to comfort someone because comfort wasn't modeled for them. Their withdrawal is a way to protect themselves.
How can someone with this style begin to heal and express feelings more easily?
Healing starts by lowering the pressure. Many avoidant people believe they have to express feelings perfectly or not at all. They think they need complete clarity before speaking. But emotional communication can be simple and imperfect. They can say, I feel overwhelmed, or I'm not sure what I feel, or I need time. These honest statements keep the connection alive. They tell their partner that they're present even if they're still finding the words.
And building emotional vocabulary sounds important.
It is, and it's not about big fancy words. It's about connecting body sensations to meaning. They might notice a tight chest and wonder if that's anxiety. They might feel restless and ask if that's fear of closeness. Or notice irritation and think about what softer feeling might be underneath. This takes practice, often best done alone at first, to explore without pressure. Over time, they can start sharing small pieces with their partner.
Can you give an example of that growth in action?
Someone with this style might say, I don't have the words yet, but I feel something heavy. I care about this, and I want to come back to it. This kind of sentence can change everything. It acknowledges their emotion without needing a full explanation. It reassures their partner without overwhelming the avoidant person. It also builds trust because it shows they're willing to engage even if it's hard.
That's a huge step forward. It means they're not lacking emotion, but rather a way to express it, which can be learned. Let's shift our focus now to avoidance of conflict or shutting down. This is another big challenge. Why is it so common for dismissive avoidance?
Conflict is often where attachment styles become most obvious. It brings up strong emotions, uncertainty, and the chance of feeling disconnected. For someone with a dismissive avoidance style, these things can feel like real danger. Avoiding conflict feels like keeping the peace, and shutting down feels like staying in control. The problem is that this kind of peace often costs them real closeness, and the control they gain from shutting down prevents them from fixing things in their relationships.
So it's a protective move. Where does this pattern usually start?
It often starts in childhood when conflict felt unsafe or didn't lead anywhere good. If disagreements at home meant criticism, yelling, or cold silence, they might have learned that conflict never ends well. They might have learned that speaking up just made things worse, or that strong emotions meant shame. In that kind of environment, a child becomes really good at stopping conflict. They become agreeable, quiet, and learn to read moods to adjust their behavior. These skills help them survive, but as adults, they become habits that block real, honest connection.
And shutting down specifically is a response to too much emotion?
Yes, it's often a way to protect themselves from intense emotions. When a conversation gets very emotional, the avoidant person can feel flooded. This feels like too much information, too many feelings, too many demands all at once. They might not have words for what's happening, but they feel a strong urge to escape. So they might go silent, look away, or stop responding. The shutdown can be mistaken for punishment, but from their side, it's usually self-protection. Silence becomes a way to stop that wave of emotion.
So if a partner brings up a concern and the conversation heats up, what might happen?
The dismissive avoidant person starts to feel overwhelmed. Their heart might race. They might feel pressure in their chest or feel the need to defend themselves. Then, suddenly, their mind might go blank. They stop talking. The partner feels abandoned and often gets even more upset. The avoidant person feels trapped and may pull away even more. They're not always refusing to engage. They're often just completely overloaded.
And sometimes they avoid conflict because they believe it's pointless anyway.
Exactly. Many learn that emotional conversations never led to comfort or understanding, so they believe talking doesn't help. They might think feelings are messy and can't be resolved. They prefer to solve problems on their own and just move on. This belief protects them from vulnerability. If you convince yourself conflict is pointless, you never have to risk being seen when you're hurt, or admitting you're wrong, or being judged. The downside is that the relationship doesn't get the chance to grow deeper by working through problems.
Shame seems to come up a lot. Does it also contribute to shutting down during conflict?
Absolutely. If they're afraid of being criticized, they might shut down to avoid saying something that shows weakness. They might feel that their partner's complaints mean they're failing. If they have a harsh inner critic, conflict can really activate that voice. They might feel embarrassed, inadequate, or angry at themselves. Instead of facing those feelings, they withdraw. Withdrawing protects them from shame, but it leaves their partner alone with the issue. Over time, the partner may feel they cannot reach you, which creates more conflict, not less.
So if a partner says, when you go quiet, I feel alone, the avoidant person might hear, you are a bad partner.
Yes, that's a common misunderstanding. They feel defensive and shut down more. The partner, trying to get a response, becomes more emotional. The avoidant person feels more ashamed and pulls away even further. Both are stuck in the cycle. The partner is trying to create connection through talking. The avoidant person is trying to create safety through silence. Without understanding, the cycle can become a steady source of pain.
And this pattern can also be reinforced by how they grew up, by their family's culture.
Yes, in some families, problems are never discussed. People act like everything is fine and just move on without actually fixing things. Children learn that bringing up issues causes tension, so they don't do it. They learn to ignore discomfort and keep the peace on the surface. As adults, they might repeat this pattern. They prefer to pretend nothing is wrong, might be polite, but hold on to resentment. They avoid difficult talks until they can't anymore, and then the conflict explodes as sudden distance or even a breakup, without ever really trying to heal. The relationship ends without ever having a real chance to heal.
That's heartbreaking, a relationship ending without a real chance. And shutting down can also come from a fear of being controlled.
Many dismissive avoidants are very sensitive to pressure. In a conflict, a partner might ask for changes or reassurance or more time together. Even if these requests are reasonable, the avoidant person might hear them as demands. Demands trigger the fear of losing their independence. Shutting down is a way to resist without fighting. Silence becomes like a boundary saying, "You can't force me into this." But the cost is that the partner feels completely shut out.
So if a partner says, we need to talk about us, they feel a sense of dread.
That phrase can feel like the start of a long, emotional discussion with no clear end. The avoidant person might suddenly become very busy or delay the conversation or say they're tired. They might agree to talk, but then offer very little. This avoidance isn't always on purpose. Their body is bracing for overwhelm, and avoidance is its way of trying to keep them safe.
This creates emotional unpredictability in the relationship, with partners walking on eggshells.
Exactly. The partner doesn't know when it's safe to bring up something difficult, feeling they have to choose their words carefully. The avoidant person feels pressured by this tension, which leads to more withdrawal. Both feel less safe, and the relationship becomes less open. It's a lose-lose situation unless they understand the root cause.
So how can someone heal from this pattern of avoiding conflict and shutting down?
Well, healing means learning that conflict isn't automatically dangerous. It can actually be a way to build deeper trust if it's handled respectfully. For avoidant people, this often means learning how to manage being overwhelmed without disappearing completely. They might need to learn how to take breaks during a discussion in a way that still keeps them connected. They might need to learn to notice what's happening in their body and slow the conversation down. These are practical skills that help them stay present without feeling flooded.
Can you give us an example of how that might look in a growing relationship?
If a dismissive, avoidant person feels overwhelmed during a discussion, they might say, "I want to talk, but I am getting flooded. Can we take a short break and come back in an hour?" This sentence does several important things. It shows they acknowledge their partner's need to fix things, it honors their own need to calm down, and it prevents them from abandoning the conversation by promising to return. Over time, practicing this builds trust. The partner learns that space doesn't mean the conversation will never happen, and the avoidant person learns that conflict can be managed without completely shutting down.
That's a very clear and helpful way to handle it. It also sounds like changing the meaning of conflict itself is important.
It is. If they can start to see conflict as something they solve together as a team, it feels less like an attack. Instead of hearing, "you are wrong," they start to hear, "we are hurting and we want to feel close again." This requires both partners to communicate with care. But the avoidant person can contribute by staying engaged and by sharing their internal experience, rather than disappearing. This approach protects them from shame, overwhelm, and losing their independence, while also allowing for real connection.
It's about finding a way to stay present, even in difficult moments. Let's talk about charm without depth. The book describes it as a confusing trait. What does that mean?
Charm is usually seen as a good thing, right? It means you're likable, easy to be around, socially skilled. Many dismissive avoidant people are very charming, especially at the beginning of relationships. They can be attentive, funny, and make people feel special. The confusion comes when this charm doesn't lead to deeper emotional closeness over time. A partner might feel captivated at first, but then lonely later. The avoidant person in turn might feel pressured as the relationship gets deeper. It's important to understand that this charm isn't usually manipulation. It's often a way of connecting that feels safe because it keeps vulnerability at a distance they can manage.
So charm allows connection without true exposure.
Exactly. When you're charming, you can create a warm feeling without really showing your inner self. You can be present without being vulnerable. You can share stories, jokes, and opinions without sharing your fears, your needs, or your softer side. For someone who has learned that being vulnerable is risky, charm is a perfect bridge. It gives them a sense of closeness without the danger of being truly seen emotionally. It allows them to feel connected while still staying in control.
And this can develop as a coping mechanism in childhood too.
Yes. A child might learn that being pleasant reduces criticism, or that humor eases tension, or that being impressive gets them attention. In homes where emotions weren't openly shared or there was a lot of criticism, charm can be a strategy to keep some connection without actually asking for emotional care. The child becomes good at sensing what others want and providing it. Later, this skill becomes their adult charm, and they might not even realize it's a strategy. It just feels like their natural personality.
So what happens when a relationship based on charm starts to deepen?
The book illustrates this. A dismissive avoidant person meets someone new and feels relaxed because the relationship is light. They can be charming without fear because nothing deep has been asked with them yet. They can be playful and attentive. The other person feels drawn in. As the relationship grows, the partner starts to want deeper emotional sharing. They want to know the avoidant person's inner life. They want reassurance, commitment. The avoidant person then starts to feel pressure. Their charm might lessen and they might become more distant. The partner feels confused because the beginning felt so close.
So the charm creates a mismatch in expectations, leading to confusion and hurt.
Yes, the partner assumes charm means emotional availability. They believe if someone can be so warm, they'll also be emotionally open. When the avoidant person struggles to show feelings later, the partner might feel misled. The avoidant person feels misunderstood. The truth is, the avoidant person's charm was genuine. They enjoyed the connection. But charm doesn't require the vulnerability that true depth does, and depth is where their fears get triggered.
And charm can also be used to smooth things over instead of genuinely fixing issues after disagreement.
Definitely. When conflict happens, some dismissive avoidant people use charm to make things better without actually dealing with the deeper problem. They might crack a joke or be extra nice or offer a kind gesture. The partner might appreciate the gesture, but still feel that the issue hasn't been resolved. The avoidant person might believe the problem is solved because the surface feels calm again. This often comes from a home where emotional repairs weren't really practiced. They learned that calm is the goal, not understanding. Charm restores calm, but deeper intimacy doesn't grow because it needs honest repair.
So after a fight, they might act cheerful the next day as if nothing happened, which confuses their partner.
Exactly. The partner wants to talk and reconnect emotionally, but the avoidant person might feel irritated by this request because in their mind, they've already restored peace through charm. Underneath, they might fear that talking will lead to shame or feeling overwhelmed. Charm allows them to avoid that fear while keeping the relationship going on the surface.
It also sounds like charm without depth can protect them from rejection.
If they keep relationships at a charming level, they can be liked by many people without risking being truly known. Being truly known is riskier because it means others might see their flaws and needs. If they have a history of being judged for their feelings, they prefer being liked for their pleasantness because that feels safer. The cost is that they can feel unseen. They might be surrounded by people who enjoy them, but still feel alone because no one truly connects with their deeper self.
This explains why some dismissive avoidants have many social connections, but few truly deep ones.
Yes, they can be the life of the party, admire their work, and have relationships that look good from the outside. But when it comes to deep emotional closeness, they feel uneasy. They might avoid it or put it off. They might not know how to move from charm to vulnerability. Or they might fear that if they stop being charming, they'll be rejected because they've learned that their charming self is the only acceptable self.
And in dating, this can lead to them being very attentive early on, but then pulling back when the other person wants more serious feelings.
They might become less responsive, say they're busy, or reduce communication. The other person might then chase that early warmth, making the avoidant person feel pressured and withdraw even more. It's not that they're trying to hurt anyone. They just feel safer when closeness is light. Charm thrives in that lightness, but depth needs vulnerability, and vulnerability triggers their defenses.
It seems this can also confuse the avoidant person themselves.
They might enjoy being liked and the ease of connection. They might not understand why relationships start to feel suffocating later. They might think their partners suddenly became too demanding. While partners sometimes do become more demanding, often they're just seeking depth. The avoidant person might not know how to offer depth without feeling exposed. They then feel caught between wanting connection and fearing intimacy. Charm becomes a compromise, allowing connection without depth, but the longing for depth remains underneath.
So how can someone heal from this and add depth to their charm?
Healing means learning to bring small bits of depth into connections without overwhelming themselves. Depth doesn't need dramatic confessions. It can start with small, honest statements, like saying you were hurt, or you're nervous, or that you care. These are vulnerable, but they're manageable steps. Over time, they build a bridge from charm to real intimacy.
What's an example of that kind of growth?
If a dismissive avoiding person notices they're using humor to avoid a sensitive topic, instead of making another joke, they might pause and say, "I'm joking because this feels uncomfortable for me." That's depth. It shows their inner experience and it keeps the tone gentle. The partner feels included, not shut out. The avoiding person stays dignified because they're being honest rather than defensive. These moments slowly change the relationship from a surface connection to a real one.
That's a very powerful and simple way to integrate vulnerability. Charm isn't bad, but it needs depth. Let's move on to inconsistency and closeness. This sounds like a really confusing and painful trait for everyone involved.
It truly is. Inconsistency and closeness means moving toward someone and then pulling away, sometimes without even understanding why. A dismissive avoidant person might be warm and affectionate one day and then distant the next. Their partner feels like the relationship is always changing. The avoidant person feels misunderstood because they genuinely care, but still feel this strong need to create distance. Understanding this pattern is crucial because it's rarely about playing games. It's usually about a powerful internal struggle between wanting connection and fearing vulnerability.
So closeness feels good in the moment, but then it becomes scary afterward.
Yes, they might enjoy tenderness, affection, and shared time. They can feel calm and connected when the closeness is light and freely chosen. The fear often kicks in when that closeness starts to suggest something more, like emotional dependence, expectations, or a deeper commitment. Their body can interpret deeper closeness as losing their independence. And since independence feels like safety to them, anything that threatens it triggers their defenses. That defense shows up as distance, which looks like inconsistency to their partner.
Can you give an example of this push and pull?
A dismissive avoidant person might have a wonderful date or a really deep conversation and go home feeling warm and good. But the next morning, they feel restless. They might start thinking about what their partner wants, worrying that the closeness means they'll now be expected to be available more often. They might worry they won't be able to meet those expectations. This pressure builds, even if no one has said anything. That pressure triggers distance. They might text less, become busy, or act emotionally flat. The partner feels a sudden drop in closeness and wonders what went wrong.
It sounds like they also need time alone to regulate their emotions, but don't communicate that effectively.
That's a key part of it. When they're with someone for long periods, especially when emotions are involved, they can feel overstimulated. It might feel like they can't think clearly. They might not even recognize it as overstimulation. They just feel irritated or tired. Taking space helps them feel like themselves again. The problem is they often don't explain this clearly. They just disappear. Their partner then feels rejected, while the avoidant person feels relief. This creates a pattern where closeness feels very unstable.
Shame plays a role here too, I imagine.
Absolutely. When a dismissive avoidant person feels close, their longing for connection becomes more visible, and they might feel love, tenderness, or even dependence. Then shame can rise. Shame tells them that needing is weak or being attached is dangerous, so they pull away to get their dignity back. They might convince themselves the relationship isn't that important, or they might start focusing on their partner's flaws or even become critical. This change can be sudden and very confusing. Underneath, they're not losing love. They're protecting themselves from the vulnerability of loving.
So, in long-term relationships, they might be close in everyday life, but distant when their partner needs reassurance?
Yes. A partner might say, "Do you still want this relationship?" And the avoidant person might respond with annoyance or silence.
The partner feels hurt and asks again later. The avoidant person feels more pressured and withdraws more. The partner becomes insecure, and the avoidant person then feels suffocated by that insecurity. It's a continuous cycle. The inconsistency isn't random. It's often a reaction to what they perceive as demands for emotional involvement.
And physical intimacy versus emotional intimacy can also cause confusion.
Some dismissive avoidants are fine with physical intimacy, like sex or cuddling, but less comfortable with emotional intimacy. They might enjoy shared experiences. A partner might see physical intimacy as a sign of deep emotional closeness, then feel confused when the avoidant person pulls away emotionally afterward. The avoidant person might not understand why their partner expects emotional openness, feeling that physical closeness should be enough. This mismatch creates a rhythm where closeness feels intense and then suddenly vanishes.
Their internal processing time also seems to be a factor, where feelings show up later.
That's right. Many need more time to figure out what they truly feel. They might feel connected in the moment, but later realize they felt overwhelmed. They might agree to something, but later feel trapped by it. Because their true feelings appear later, their behavior changes later, and the partner experiences this as unpredictability. They might say yes, then pull back. They might seem interested, then go quiet. These shifts feel unfair to the partner, and they're confusing even to the avoidant person.
So if a partner suggests a future plan, like a trip, they might agree but then feel anxious later.
Yes, they agree, wanting to be kind and avoid conflict, but later anxiety builds about the commitment. They might start finding reasons why the plan isn't good or become distant. The partner feels rejected, and the avoidant person feels trapped. Their nervous system reacts to the idea of obligation, and the inconsistency comes because their initial agreement was made before that deeper reaction truly set in.
And this inconsistency often triggers insecurity in partners, creating a cycle of chasing and avoiding.
When a partner never knows where they stand, they naturally seek clarity. They ask questions, look for reassurance, and become more emotionally expressive. For a dismissive avoidant, this can feel like being chased, which triggers their fear of being controlled. They pull away more, the partner gets more anxious, and the cycle intensifies. The avoidant person's inconsistency causes the partner to pursue, and that pursuit causes more avoidance. Both end up feeling unsafe.
So inconsistency isn't a flaw, but a pattern serving a purpose, where connection activates fear. How can this be healed?
Healing begins with talking about space clearly. Many dismissive avoidants need alone time, but don't know how to ask for it without sounding like they're rejecting their partner. So they just disappear. Learning to say, I need some time to reset and I care about you, can completely change the pattern. It allows them to take space without causing panic. The partner relaxes because they know what's happening. The avoidant person feels less trapped, and the partner feels less abandoned.
What's an example of this growth in action?
After a deeply connected evening, the avoidant person might notice the urge to withdraw. Instead of going silent, they say, I loved last night, and I also feel a little overwhelmed today. I need some quiet time, and I will check in later. This honors both their closeness and their need for space. It also stops the partner from filling the silence with fear. Over time, this kind of honesty turns inconsistency into a more predictable rhythm.
That's a very transparent and considerate way to communicate. It sounds like they're learning that closeness doesn't have to mean trapped, and space doesn't mean rejection. Now, let's explore the push-pull paradox, which the book calls one of the most painful and misunderstood patterns.
The push-pull paradox is the experience of truly wanting closeness, but then pulling away from it, often repeatedly. It can feel like a contradiction that makes no sense to anyone involved. The dismissive avoidant person might wonder why they can't simply enjoy love, and their partner might wonder why closeness is always met with distance. Both people can end up feeling exhausted. The paradox isn't a sign that the avoidant person is playing games. It's a sign that two very strong needs are clashing inside them: the need for connection and the need for safety through independence.
So the push comes from a genuine longing for connection.
Yes, even dismissive avoidants long for closeness. They might not talk about it much, but they feel a deep desire for companionship, affection, and being understood. When they feel lonely or feel safe with a partner, they push toward connection. They might initiate contact, be affectionate, or open up more than usual. These moments are real and deeply felt. They are the part of the avoidant person that genuinely wants love.
And then the pull happens when that closeness starts to activate fear, but not always obvious fear.
That's right. The fear is often hidden. It might not feel like fear at all. It might feel like irritation or boredom, or a sense that the relationship is becoming too much. But underneath, the fear is usually about losing their independence, being obligated, being judged, or becoming emotionally overwhelmed. When that fear rises, they pull back to get a sense of control again. This pull can look like distance, silence, criticism, or even distraction. The partner feels this shift and often responds by trying to get closer, which can make the avoidant person's fear even stronger, leading to an even stronger pull away.
It sounds like a self-fulfilling prophecy, a painful cycle. Can you give an example?
A dismissive avoidant person feels lonely and reaches out. They have a warm weekend with their partner and feel really close. The partner feels hopeful and starts talking about future plans. The avoidant person then feels pressure, feels trapped, and withdraws. The partner feels hurt and asks what's wrong. The avoidant person feels even more pressure and pulls away further. The partner might then become anxious, trying to get back that closeness that just existed. The avoidant person feels chased and wants even more distance. This cycle repeats. Each person's response makes sense from their own point of view, and the paradox just gets stronger.
It can even happen within a single moment where they feel tenderness and then discomfort right after.
Yes, they might be sitting close to their partner and feel a wave of warmth, and then immediately feel a wave of discomfort. They might want to say something loving, but stop themselves. They might want to be held, but then feel tense when it actually happens. This isn't because they don't know what they want. It's because the very thing they want, closeness, is linked to old pain. Their body experiences closeness as both a relief and a threat. So their mind tries to solve this conflict by switching between closeness and distance.
And this paradox, like other patterns, is rooted in childhood experiences.
If closeness in childhood was emotionally unstable or unpredictable, they learned to both crave warmth and also to distrust it. If closeness was tied to criticism, the child may have learned that being seen leads to shame. If closeness was tied to obligation, the child may have learned that love cost freedom. Those lessons do not disappear. They become the internal operating system. The adult wants intimacy, but intimacy activates the old lesson, and the lesson triggers defense.
And their defense often looks like deactivating, where they mentally turn down their need for connection.
That's exactly what happens. They might start focusing on their partner's flaws or convince themselves their partner is too needy. They might tell themselves the relationship isn't right or fantasize about being alone. These thoughts can feel very clear and true to them, but often they're just part of the pull, a way to reduce closeness by making it seem undesirable. The avoidant person might not realize these deactivating thoughts are a response to fear. They might genuinely believe they're just being realistic.
So after a big step in a relationship, like meeting families or moving in, they might suddenly feel distant and critical?
Yes, the relationship becomes more serious, intimacy increases, and that increased intimacy activates their fear. So they pull back to regain a sense of safety. The partner feels blindsided because things seemed good, and the avoidant person feels confused because they do care. It's that fear response kicking in.
This paradox sounds incredibly painful, creating instability and confusion for both sides.
It is. The partner never knows what to expect. They feel they have to earn closeness or prove they're safe. The avoidant person feels guilty for hurting the partner and resentful of the partner's needs at the same time. This guilt and resentment can make the paradox even worse. Guilt might make them push closer to try and fix things, while resentment makes them pull away to reclaim their independence.
The relationship becomes a constant dance between trying to fix things and retreating.
It also affects their self-respect, making them feel like they're not good at relationships.
Many dismissive avoidants want to see themselves as steady and rational. When they find themselves pushing and pulling, they can feel ashamed. They might decide it's better to avoid commitment entirely. This is understandable, but it's also a loss because they often have a deep capacity for loyalty and care. The paradox doesn't mean they can't love. It means they need to learn how to manage closeness without it becoming a threat.
So how do they begin to heal this push-pull pattern?
Healing starts with recognizing the pattern itself. It often becomes clear when you notice what happens right after moments of closeness. If you tend to withdraw after intimacy, that's a clue. If you become critical after a step forward in commitment, that's a clue. If you get irritated when a partner expresses a need, that's a clue. These reactions often happen at predictable times. When you can see those predictable moments, you can prepare for them, which gives you more choice in how you respond.
And it's important to understand that both the push and the pull are valid feelings.
Absolutely. The push is their need for connection, and the pull is their need for safety. Both are legitimate. The goal isn't to get rid of either of these needs, but to find a way for both to exist without harming the relationship. This often means learning to take space without just disappearing. It also means learning to stay emotionally connected even when they need physical space. Their partner can feel safe if they know they will return and that they still care.
If a dismissive avoidant person feels the urge to withdraw after a close weekend, instead of going silent, they might say, "I feel close to you, and I also feel a bit overwhelmed. I need a quiet day to reset, and I want to see you tomorrow." This statement honors both the push and the pull. It tells the partner the closeness was real, and it also sets a boundary that protects the avoidant person's need for space. Over time, this kind of honesty can reduce the intensity of the paradox because they don't have to use distance as a secret shield anymore.
And for partners, how did they contribute to this healing, especially if they tend to react with panic to the pull?
That's a challenge, especially for partners with an anxious attachment style. But intense pursuit can actually make avoidance worse. This doesn't mean partners should suppress their needs. It means expressing them in a way that invites connection rather than demanding it. The avoidant person needs to learn to stay present, and the partner needs to give space without abandoning their own needs. When both people work on this pattern, the cycle can soften.
It sounds like a powerful way to understand how both partners contribute to the cycle and how they can both work to change it. Finally, let's discuss how these traits confuse others. The book emphasizes that this confusion creates a lot of pain. Why is that?
People don't just react to what you do, they react to what your behavior seems to mean. Dismissive avoidant traits often send very mixed signals, especially to partners who see love as being emotionally open and consistently close. The avoidant person might feel they're being reasonable and in control, while their partner feels dismissed, shut out, or emotionally abandoned. Both people end up feeling misunderstood, and that misunderstanding itself becomes a major source of conflict and pain.
One reason for this confusion, the book says, is that avoidant people often appear fine even when they're not.
That's a big one. They might not show distress in obvious ways or ask for comfort. They often keep functioning even when they're hurting. Partners might assume that if someone seems fine, they don't need anything. Then when the avoidant person suddenly withdraws, the partners feel completely blindsided. This withdrawal can look like a sudden loss of interest, but it's often a response to feeling overwhelmed or fearful. The partner is left trying to understand a shift that was never explained.
And there's this confusing gap between warmth and distance.
Many dismissive avoidant people can be incredibly warm and affectionate at times. They can be funny, present, and make a partner feel very special. But then, as closeness gets deeper or emotional needs arise, they can become very distant. The partner experiences this as inconsistency, as if love is being given and then taken away. They might try to get back to that earlier warmth, which leads to them chasing. The avoidant person feels this pursuit as pressure and withdraws even more. This leaves the partner feeling even more confused and hurt.
So, a loving weekend followed by days of silence creates a huge disconnect because of different interpretations.
Exactly. The partner wonders if something is wrong, might ask for reassurance. The avoidant person might respond with irritation or silence. The partner feels rejected. The avoidant person might believe they're just busy or need space. The partner experiences the shift as emotional abandonment. The confusion isn't because anyone is irrational, it's because the meaning of closeness and space is completely different for each person.
Another confusing trait is how they show love through actions, not words.
They might be very responsible, dependable, and helpful. They might solve problems, handle daily tasks, and show up in a crisis. Partners appreciate these actions, but can still feel unloved because emotional reassurance is missing. The avoidant person might feel offended by this, thinking their loyalty and effort should be enough proof of love. The partner, however, believes love should be expressed through feelings and words. Both are acting based on their own past experiences. Without understanding, this difference can turn into resentment on both sides.
And their tendency for emotional minimization also causes confusion?
Dismissive avoidants often downplay problems. They might say something isn't a big deal or treat feelings as overreactions, quickly moving toward solutions. Partners often see this minimization as invalidating their feelings. They feel their inner world is being dismissed. The avoidant person usually doesn't mean to dismiss. They're trying to reduce the emotional intensity and restore calm, because calm feels safe to them. But the partner experiences this calm as emotional absence. The avoidant person's attempt to soothe themselves actually makes the partner more distressed, which increases the intensity, making the avoidant person minimize even more. Confusion grows because each person believes they're doing what will help.
So, in a conflict, if a partner says they're hurt, the avoidant person might explain why it's not a serious issue.
Yes, and the partner feels unheard and becomes more emotional. The avoidant person feels overwhelmed and withdraws. The partner feels abandoned and the avoiding person feels attacked. Both are reacting to the pattern rather than the original issue. The confusion comes from the avoidant person believing that reducing emotion will solve the problem, while the partner believes emotional connection is the solution.
They also confuse others because they need time to process, but don't always say so.
They might go quiet and take space, which partners interpret as punishment or avoidance. But the avoidant person might genuinely be trying to sort out their feelings, not have the words yet, or not know what they need. Their silence can be functional for them. For the partner, silence can be terrifying. It feels like disconnection. The partner then pushes for conversation, making the avoiding person feel more pressured. The cycle intensifies, and confusion becomes conflict.
Many partners want to feel close by sharing fears and needs. When the avoidant person responds with blankness, humor, or changes the subject, partners feel rejected. They might think the avoidant person is emotionally immature or unwilling to invest. The avoidant person feels judged and retreats. Underneath, they might be afraid of being exposed or not good enough or just unsure how to express what they feel. Partners often see this behavior as a choice, but it's often a learned, automatic reaction.
They can also seem emotionally unaffected by major events, which is very confusing to others.
After a fight, they might act as if everything is fine. After a breakup, they might seem calm. After a stressful period, they might not talk about it. Partners and friends assume they don't care, but in reality, many care deeply. They just handle emotion privately. They might also be numb in the moment and feel the emotion much later. This timing difference confuses others. A partner might want comfort now, while the avoidant person isn't connected to the emotion yet. Later, when the avoidant person feels it, the partner might already be exhausted or guarded.
So after a major conflict, the partner wants to talk to repair things, but the avoidant person just wants to move on.
Yes, the partner sees moving on as denial. The avoidant person sees the conversation as pressure. Both want peace, but they're trying to get there through different doors. The confusion is about what repair means. For many avoidant people, repair is simply returning to normal.
For many partners, repair is emotional engagement. When these definitions clash, both people feel unheard.
It seems like they can be deeply committed in some ways, but emotionally distant in others, which is also very confusing.
They might be loyal for years, but still avoid emotional intimacy. They might be responsible and dependable, but feel uncomfortable saying, "I love you," or talking about the future. Partners struggle to understand how someone can be so present in practical life and so absent emotionally. The avoidant person struggles to understand why their practical devotion isn't enough. Without a shared understanding, both people can feel misunderstood and resentful.
So, how can we reduce this confusion and the pain it causes?
Understanding how these traits confuse others isn't about blaming anyone, it's about building empathy. If you're dismissive avoidant, you might not realize how your silence feels to a partner, or how your minimization feels like dismissal, or how your need for space can be seen as abandonment. If you love someone dismissive avoidant, you might not realize how your pursuit can feel like control, or how your emotional urgency can feel overwhelming. When both people understand this confusion, they can start to understand each other's behavior more accurately.
What's a practical step toward reducing this confusion?
Clear communication about space and care. The avoidant person can learn to say they need time without disappearing and to reassure their partner they'll return. The partner can learn to express their needs without making them sound like accusations. These changes don't require anyone to become a different person. They require both people to respect each other's nervous systems and past experiences.
It sounds like it's about learning to speak each other's emotional language. This journey, as Mindy Rivers describes in her book, Understanding the Dismissive Avoidant Attachment Style, is about replacing confusion with clarity. It's about learning that closeness doesn't have to be a trap and distance isn't always rejection. With practice and understanding, relationships can become much steadier for everyone involved. If you found this conversation helpful, consider sharing it with someone who might also benefit from these insights.